welcome everyone to our weekly All Hands for May 28th, 2025. And we're going to use this time to sync up on work that's going on around the org, eliminate blockers, and prioritize work. Now, sometimes, always the call is recorded thanks to the tireless efforts of Winverse and shared on YouTube. So if you don't want to be shared, please let me know in the meeting. But in general, the video is always on YouTube, and for clips, we put them on social media occasionally. In case you're wondering what we do, our aim is to help purpose-driven communities use Web3 tooling to generate revenue and engagement. And we can get into the why BCard a little bit more. Maybe not a little bit more, but you can take a look at that article if you want. On the lag metric side, I actually think that we need a refresh on the lag and lead metrics, and maybe something we'll get into when we get into the discussion. But in general, we have 372 transaction. That's down 516. And we have 3 weekly transacting users, 0 new users, and 11 communities deployed. On the team-wide announcement side, we're looking for we have some standard bounties here. I won't go through them all, but these are some of the standard bounties. And of course, honestly, I'm looking always for more standard bounties. So if there are other things that people can do to contribute, feel free to bring it up and we can attach a bounty to it. I think it is important to have that path for people to contribute. One thing I didn't do was take a quick attendance here. So let me just do that. Thanks, Tom, Arkisti, and Drost, and Shelby is here, and NF Thinker, and Winverse is here, and Homie is here. Nice to see you, Homie. Thanks for joining. Feel free to pop up on stage if you feel so inclined, but obviously not required. Feel free to stay down there if you want as well. I feel like in the past, sometimes you've said that you're unable to come up to the stage. Oh, hey, Homie, how's it going?
Good. I'm on vacation, so today is a day when I can speak if need be.
Nice. Well, great to have you. Thanks for coming, spending your vacation with us. Hopefully, it will be entertaining. I feel like that's the baseline for everything nowadays. Is you got to be entertaining first, and then useful at least, or hopefully at least useful after that. But entertaining is its own kind of use.
That's the essentials.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So on the milestone perspectives, looking at creating revenue and engagement, again, I think that these milestones need to dust off. I think probably we'll do a retrospective pretty soon. I don't think next week, but maybe the week after next. Anyways, if we do that, what we'll do is then synthesize that retrospective, update our lead and lag metrics, and update our milestones as well. But for now, let's keep what we have. We have 10 weekly transacting users. We're aiming at focusing on getting our new users right now. We have the new product on the way, community pages. Tom got a proof of concept up that allows us to log into Privy, same Privy that we're using on our staging site on this new community page, and we can do it in a cross-domain way. So that means that we can do it for hopefully almost any community. Now that is one of the technical hurdles, so huge work on that, Tom. And he even put in a widget to sign up for a BCard, which I don't know if it's actually completed that widget, but I did start using it.
Just a front-end mock-up of an idea that I was having about sort of the proliferation of sign-up forms. So yeah, the mostly just a mock-up for the UI, or an idea for the UI, I guess I should say, and then a lot of API work to be done on the back end for us to enable that.
Nice. No, I absolutely love it. I think that it's not like the top priority, but it totally hits the kind of, let's say, the purpose or the potential for these kinds of things. A lot of these, I was saying in the product meet last week, a lot of these existing purpose-driven communities, they have a website, right? Like that's one of the first things you do when you create a purpose-driven communities. And the way that a lot of the products that work with nonprofits work is that they're just kind of a little widget that someone puts on their website. So if you're wanting a little WordPress site, you have like a little widget that you can put there, a little HTML snippet that kind of gets the JavaScript and puts it up on the page in a way that's pretty obvious. So we're aiming to create a bunch of these widgets. We're going to create our own websites first, but the hope is that we can potentially use all of these widgets independently, but the more you have on your page, they all work together. So that's kind of the idea with community pages, is essentially to create this kind of toolbox and to use Black Flag Collective and the B Foundation to kind of show what is possible with these new technologies. We are kind of heads down on the build mode side, so I would say that not a lot of those ideas have coalesced into a form that you can actually see and use and that kind of thing, but we're working on it right now. So I did create some wireframes. You can see them in the product chat if you haven't, in the team section of the Discord. Feel free to take a look at those and give me some feedback. The next step is really to refine wireframes based on some of the feedback that the product team gave me last week, and just also making them useful for mobile as well, because I don't think it's obvious how the desktop wireframes are going to be used for mobile, but I do have a plan for that. Replace the Black Flag Collective site. So we do have a site up right now. It's a static site using Hugo. We're going to continue using static sites, but this time it's going to be with the technology that Tom has done. So the intent will be to create a site which is pretty much almost exactly the same looks as the Black Flag Collective site, but with a different technology base. And that should be relatively straightforward, let's say, because the CSS has, if you go on that Black Flag Collective site, it's pretty basic. And then finally, adding snapshot functionality. So we have snapshot functionality in the BCard app. Can we use those React widgets that we've already created and put them into our Black Flag Collective site so that you can vote on the open web just as easily as you can vote in our BCard app? So that will be the hope. And the intent, of course, behind this is to create something that anyone can access, that anyone can use. And in some ways, right now, a lot of the functionality that we do, you have to have a BCard to use it. What if that wasn't the case and you could use some of this functionality, use some of our experiments without needing a BCard? Well, that would allow us to get more people to test it, and that would allow us to understand which is useful, which kinds of functionality is useful sooner. And so that's the intent behind these community pages. Yeah, I don't know. How's everyone feeling about that?
Just now getting it open and zooming in on it so I can really get a better idea. But no, yeah, let's take a look at it. Can you bring it up, or do you want me to share it? Or
sure, I can bring it up if you like. 1 second.
Okay. And I've got it up zoomed in too, so whatever you like.
Yeah, I think I have it here though. So let me just pop it open.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I just had it minimized. I can share that if you guys want to take a look. All right. So here's the kind of idea behind it. Here on the, I think you guys should be able to see my screen. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah. So the intent is it's very similar to the site we have right now. You can see we are the Black Flag at the top, which is kind of like our heading. The key here is these kinds of widgets on the right and the ones on the left. It's very similar to the way that it works in the BCard site right now, like this area right here, this kind of events, chatter, and vote section. So you kind of have like a home. It's really like what's showing on the current Black Flag Collective site. But let's say you clicked on events here. So like here on the events widget or on the events header there, it would take you to this kind of view of events. And this could be as simple as just like a Luma embed, right? Like we don't necessarily have to write all of this information here or all of this code here. We could just be using a Luma embed. Maybe it's easier for us to do, to write our own, but we'll see.
Oh, you're back.
So,
you're back.
You were out for a sec there on audio, but you're back.
Okay. So what was the last thing you heard me say?
Events.
Yeah,
events. You were talking about chatter. You mentioned the widgets of chatter and events. Click on events.
Yeah. So if you click on events, like this could be as easy as just like a Luma embed here, right? And so like this UI is ripped off from Luma, but maybe we can write our own UI. Maybe we will use Luma's. Either way, the idea is that this section over here is connected to this widget on the right. They both are using the same data and they're showing it in kind of a different way. But if you click see all events, you would kind of get sent here and you can see more than just the 3 events. And the intent is a lot of communities have events, right? Like we have a weekly community call every week, and we have like in-person events that happen. So that could create a little something for us as well, and other communities as well. And then let's say you clicked on the chatter page. The intent, well, I've always felt like Farcaster is kind of a broadcast system, right? So it in some ways can be the glue between different sites. Hey, I understand what's going on, what's happening because I see that it's coming up in this Farcaster feed. And so it's really just a Farcaster feed, whether it's by channel or by account or something like that, doesn't really matter as much as just the fact that like, hey, there are some announcements here or something like that. Like maybe it's not chatter, maybe it's announcements, but I did like the idea of chatter. The reason I called it chatter was it's really nice to know that there are multiple people in the community doing things, right? Especially as a new joiner, you don't want it to just be a couple of people. It allows you to catch the vibe that's going on. Hey, Tom, I see that you unmuted.
I was just going to say, I like the term chatter because it kind of doesn't tie us to a specific platform. So each community may have their audience available on X or on Farcaster or wherever it is. So keeping it sort of generic allows the community to customize sort of what distribution platform makes the most sense to them, which I like.
Yep. Good point. And like the idea also is that chatter widget would be based upon like, this is the most important post of the moment, which is maybe like an announcement or something. But if you go in here, you can kind of see everything. And then we have the vote widget, which, you know, it's almost exactly like our snapshot widget. And we could just embed snapshot here, although it would be hard to vote on here. So maybe we'll just recreate the UI like we do in our app. But that's kind of the idea. Hey, we have these little widgets. Each of those does some discrete piece of functionality. You'll notice there are widgets that we have in our current BCard app that I didn't put in this yet. So stuff like badges. I actually think those badges are pretty important and cool, right? Like, hey, if you join, you get a badge. If you become a certain type of member, you get a badge. You know, these kinds of things. And that could also be an engagement piece, right? Like these are some of the things that we are testing. For instance, Drost ran that that execution with Chippy to kind of distribute badges based on whether or not you used a BCard at the real life Chippy event. And that actually was pretty successful. You know, that actually got people to use BCard, to even sign up for BCard. More people signed up for BCard because of that than people who signed up for BCard on Glow USDC.
Nice. That's a great activation. And I think, you know, if you can combine Farcaster Fridays with some form of BCard promotion, that could be a potential. That could definitely go big because in terms of Farcaster, I think Lynx, you have a really strong profile over there, and there are quite a few developers who you interact with on a regular basis, and they're the type of people who would be able to make a product, you know, really go viral in a way, right? If one of them mentioned it or started using it, or if Farcaster Fridays was to adopt something there, it would potentially take off. But you know, not hundreds of thousands of people, but thousands of people, and that would be fantastic for us. So I don't know. I love the vision where you're directing this. Also, as Tom was mentioning earlier, I love the term chatter. It might be worth thinking of like some other generic terms that we could use, but chatter's great. There was like feed, but feed is almost too much like Twitter. And then in terms of chatter, are you thinking of Farcaster only feed, or would you be able to connect
So
other accounts to that?
none of this is kind of set in stone, right? And so like I'll mention to Shelby and yourself as well, like all of this is kind of based on what we are going to use it for first for Black Flag Collective. But like let's say for instance, Kimberly from OMF was just like, hey, I like what you guys did with Black Flag Collective. I want to do that. We don't have a community on Farcaster though. We have a community on X. Okay, given that someone will use this, then we will put the effort into actually making it, right? And so to answer your question more directly, well, for Black Flag Collective, we have our community on Farcaster, so we will create a Farcaster chatter widget. But as soon as we have someone else who is willing to try it out with their community, we can look into creating like a different attachment. And again, the goal is really to connect a lot of different things and make it really easy to use, right? And so the priority of us connecting those things is a kind of a commitment that people will use it.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's all, with these tools, if you make it fun and easy to use and make it indispensable, then people will use it. And it doesn't really take much convincing. They kind of use it because they like it or they need it in their lives to make it better. And having Luma embeds, having voting, having obviously, connected directly, maybe we should build in connect with Farcaster. That might be a good option, because then it would make a login process easier. But obviously, that would go in contrast to the Privy.
Privy actually has to connect with Farcaster on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we can enable that, and like we can we're always going to ask for email. Well, I mean, at least in the shorter midterm, right? Because it just makes a lot of sense. But they can add like any number of wallets. They can add like Farcaster. They can add X. So Privy kind of has that all in one. We just haven't like you can't see it because we haven't enabled it on our side.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that might be a great addition. Farcaster is definitely on a roll right now. I mean, they just raised $1.2 million in 24 hours, or less than 10 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
I caved and bought Pro.
I was like, who knows what this NFT is potentially worth?
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's nice to be able to be a part of that and be early, because I mean, the whole thing is based on a better version of what we already have, and like open source social media that you can take anywhere.
And
It's swappable.
we will talk exactly about that in our discussion as well. This idea of like,
sorry to derail.
no, it's not derail. It's great feedback. Another thing I should mention as well, like when you mentioned like, hey, we can potentially tap into Farcaster Fridays. It's exactly one of the reasons why we're working with Black Flag, like we're using Black Flag Collective as a site. So like. Because we're doing in real life events, and it just feels like really like there are people who will show up and are already showing up. So for instance, if we did like a monthly POAP drop, right? Maybe we can work with POAP to like sponsor POAP drops for Farcaster Fridays where, hey, if you show up and you sign up on this site, you'll get a POAP every time you show up. Like we make it easy for the host to kind of just say like, hey, who showed up? Oh, this person signed up for the event and they showed up, boom, right? Like I'm not sure how to make it easy yet, right? But like the intent is that like, hey, you already have a Privy wallet. We can just send you things there. Maybe you have a connected wallet. We can just show those badges right here. So it can kind of show your attendance for all of these things over time. And I think that is also really cool.
Okay. Yeah. So it might be worth having like a tickets or credentials or NFTs, coupons, whatever, that sort of section. But I don't know if, obviously we don't want to clutter things up. But you'll need a place to see if you want to connect on this site anyway, this frame that we're looking at. I guess that join would be an account button, or
that join would change. And again, this is why I need to update the wireframe a little bit deeper, because this is all the unconnected, right? And so like when you join, something should happen, right? And like it should probably tell you like what kind of member you are, right? Like so for instance on Strong Towns you can be like a basic member, or you can be like a premium member. If you donate over $500, you automatically become a premium member, and if you donate even $1, you become a member for a year, right? And so like that kind of idea, Tom is already kind of, so you can see it in the chat, he's got his account management and stuff like that. He's showing the connect with Farcaster button. There's so many options here for us to use. The key again is, and it goes back to what we're trying to do, like as a whole, it's to bridge the UX gap between Web3 and the real world. So the key will be to make it to make POAPs easier to use than the POAP app, to make voting easier to use than the Snapshot app, to make events easier to use than the Events XYZ app, right? So all of it easier to use, most of it on chain, but the idea is it's fun, it's interesting, it's useful, and how that's going to look, I don't quite know yet. But for instance, the things that you're talking about, your account could even be just another widget, right? Like the idea is that this like widget framework can be scalable so that communities can add as many or as few widgets as they like. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're going. The idea is to be flexible so that we can run experiments a little bit more easily than we've been doing so far, and see what is actually going to work for communities.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if we should think of events as more of a part of the product. We always consider the debit card the product, right? And I guess this kind of it also coincides with what you were saying about offering more. Obviously we have Taxman, etc. But how would we? Is there I just feel like events are more monetizable than, say, like the voting, the even the fees that we earn off the network transactions, right? Interchange fees are pretty small, all things considered. Is
Yep.
there a way that we can monetize events that would turn it into a product that we could focus more time and energy into?
So in general, I understand why you're talking about monetization. And if we were aiming to get funding or grants, we would really need to talk about monetization. But right now, just in the specific phase that we're in, I just really want to create something useful for communities first, right? And starting with our own communities. And then we can look at hey, maybe we want to monetize events because we see that they're the ones that are really working. Or maybe we find a community that voting really worked for, and we just end up monetizing something different. But I think it's really important for us to create something useful first, and then based on what is useful, decide how we're gonna make money off of it. Or yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see what you mean.
It's
Monetization in the future, but yeah, I guess in terms of thinking of it as more of a product, I don't know. Maybe that's just in my own head.
the product
And
is
also,
yeah, like the
sorry,
product
go ahead.
is like a suite of tools to help people connect, to help people use Web3, right? And so if you look, okay, we had this password manager. The reason for that was communities needed passwords. We noticed that, we made a product. The reason we had Taxman was because a bunch of people got hit with a huge tax bill over at Thankless. We noticed that, we made a product, right? The product is really a suite of tools to help run your community, right? And I think that we can narrow on it more if we make it let's say free to use or open to use.
From a framing standpoint, do you think something like WordPress with Web3 as a framing makes sense? Sort of as a way of sort of nicely exposing features that are in Web3 for web users? Maybe it's the kind of idea.
Yeah, you could think of that like that for sure. The fire alarm in my building is starting to go off right now, so sorry if you can hear it. But yes, that is the kind of idea. The only thing is I would want people to think that it's specifically for WordPress, right? Because it won't be. I really think a static site is as well a Web3 tool that's going to enable us to free even more communities or enable more communities as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be difficult if people would assume that using WordPress meant WordPress was involved. What I was thinking more along the lines of it's a replacement for WordPress using Web3 tooling that allows communities to set up easily manageable dynamic pages, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's in some ways it's like a hub for your community that you own, right? I think a lot of communities use Notion because it has all of the different tools. It's not the best version of each tool, but it's good enough for them to get something up and running. That's the kind of idea here. It's like a website that's kind of good enough to get you up and running. Or if you have your own website, it's a set of widgets that you can put inside your website to make it more fun and engaging.
Well, I like it. And what about on mobile? Mobile? Sorry, been
Yeah.
in England too long.
I am hoping to create some wireframes for mobile today, but it's going to look a lot like the basic information architecture is going to look a lot like our current BCard app. The the BCard app, I think like we need it because it's a standalone app for the card, and adding all these things like transaction history and loading your card and seeing your balance and stuff like that. It's not great for a community site, right? Like it's like you're trying to do two different things. So that's why we kind of decided to create like a new tech base, and hopefully that we can use our widgets on both. But it is going to look a lot like that BCard app, in that you have this kind of home screen where you see these kinds of widgets, and those when you click on see more, it kind of drops you into that into like a full page. So when you click on in the BCard app, when you click on vote, it takes you to the vote screen, right? And you can see more about voting.
Perfect. Okay, nice. Well done.
Yeah, so this is what we're aiming for with B pages. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I really like where you were
I like
going,
the
Tom.
direction.
Oh, sorry. Got right in there before you addressed. What were you going to say?
Oh, sorry, I didn't. I've got a little bit of latency right now, I think. No, I just was agreeing. I think I like the concept and direction, and yeah, let's keep expanding it, refining it.
Yeah, Tom, I especially like what you were saying about being kind of like replacing WordPress, and you could also make it even more like Squarespace, right? Like the way the sites flow. I guess WordPress has some nice plugins now as well, but I think back to like more of a modern web plugin architecture. And we could really make the community pages even nicer. These wireframes are showing us the basics, but what could we do with so some of the things that we see in more modern pages are like floating backgrounds and all this sort of interactive stuff. How fancy can we get with our web pages, but before we get too sort of customizable and difficult to deal with?
Yeah, and I think like we could really explore this further, right? Like I think it creates a framework for us to explore and experiment with. Like Drost a little higher said, like a visually interesting gamified dashboard to see which events and communities are having the coolest events and the funding they got. Yeah, like I think like something like that could capture attention, but it only really works in context of like, hey, this is a community that we have something interesting that's already going on, and here's an interesting visualization. Like those kinds of eye-catching or let's say intellectually interesting things, they work top of funnel. And what we really need to do is like once they get here, like once we've captured their attention, what are they going to do? Well, that's what we're working on right now. So there's the snapshot votes, there's like the joining, there's like, hey, I can get engaged because I'm going to go to an event and I'm going to get a POAP, right? Like it's all building blocks towards it. But yeah.
Maybe a way to talking about building engagement. When somebody comes across an event that they like, or maybe it's an overlapping community, you could then share that and say, hey, this is an event I'm going to, or kind of like even on Facebook events, interested in going, that kind of thing, or just
share with your friends, share with someone who would be interested in going too, so that they can sign up.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to refine it for these in real life events, but every new community is a new opportunity to create a better refinement for that community. And in doing so, we will be updating these widgets, which can be used on any website. Yeah, and so just to be 100% clear about these wireframes, this is a drag and drop creation thing, right? Like this isn't the thing here, right? Like I don't expect the website to look like this. It's really just to show the layout and ideas, right? Like this is not what it's going to look like, right? Like it's intentionally like crappy looking, right? So that you can kind of get the idea, right? Like here's a tab screen. Like we would never make something that looks like this, but it just looks like this because it's easy to use and get the ideas across. All right.
Oh, I
Any
just had a
other
quick question before we move on.
Yeah.
So when we see the realization of this product in the fullness of time, do you see it as like an open source downloadable repo that people can deploy on their own? Or do you see it more as communities ask us to set this thing up for them and we kind of do it?
The short answer is both.
Yeah,
Because
I think so too.
yeah. Like because if communities are asking us to do it, we're going to charge for it, and we're going to ensure that that we're actually able to pay for it, especially in the long run, right?
Yeah.
But if we use certain tools, like let's say we're using Orbiter to get these web pages on IPFS, and the websites have their own domains, and people are vibe coding, then it still allows us to accomplish our mission by making it open source and leaving it open for people to just use them.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking about the WordPress model as well too, is that I kind of love that there is a open source tier that people can just grab and play around with and do what they want to with, deploy their own instances, run their own websites and everything like that. But at the higher level, there's also a WordPress.com company that helps you with sort of deploying your website and handles a lot of the technical back-end infrastructure stuff that most people don't want to get their hands dirty with, I think, from the get-go. So providing a couple of routes to allow people to accomplish that, but leveraging the technology in either case, I think is good. And maybe to kick back to NF Thinker's idea about monetizable streams, that's one channel that does give us an opportunity to market towards monetizability.
Okay, this is actually a good segue into our discussion item. So why don't we get into it? Because like this idea of top down versus bottom up, you brought it up in WordPress, right? Like the reason I think WordPress was so successful, I think at one point it was literally 40% of all sites on the internet were WordPress sites. I think it's a little lower now, but it's still crazy high. Like at least 20% of the sites on the internet are WordPress sites, right? Like that's insane. And why was it so adopted? I mean, what you could say because it allowed for exactly these things that Tom is saying. It was open source, anyone could run it, and it could be run on any server. And yes, there was like kind of this enterprise support or commercial tier available, but it is really that kind of bottom-up support that allowed people to play with it, create plugins, create their own websites, and make it a really easy-to-use platform, a really useful platform. It's hard to do that as just a team who's working on it. It's way easier to do it when there are tons of developers working on it for their individual use cases. Hey, go ahead, Tom. I saw that you unmuted. No, nothing? All right. Well, then let's look at this top down versus bottom up. I was looking at it because something on Farcaster inspired me today. Apparently, the Canadian Prime Minister. Oh, hey, Tom. Well, there goes Tom. Well, I'm sure he'll be back. The Canadian Prime Minister said Canada is like Athens and America is like Rome. And so I looked into what that meant, and someone posted about it on Farcaster. Well, this was a kind of interesting quote that came up. Athens wasn't democratic because it was perfectly fair. It was democratic because power was exercised by the people. And Rome, in contrast, was about managing power, not sharing it. And I think that is something that's really indicative of a dichotomy that we see in blockchain today. You see it in DAOs, you see it in organizations. The thing that makes blockchain really attractive to me is the ability for it to give bottom-up coordination to people, right? And so no intermediaries required, although it can be useful, direct financial and communication networks with people around the world. So the interesting thing about Farcaster versus Twitter is, this is something NF Thinker was saying earlier, is that Farcaster is open, it's programmable, you can build on it. You don't have to use the Warpcast client, although, right now it's in a state where Warpcast client is probably the best client out there, but you can use Coinbase Wallet to post on Farcaster. You can use Uno, you can use Recaster. There's a bunch of different clients that are using the same data set. And you can say the same thing for WordPress. You don't have to use WordPress.com. You can download it. You can use the open source version. You can put it on your own server. And the real power of that is that the individuals can exercise their own power. You don't have to get permission from WordPress to create a WordPress plugin. You don't have to get permission from Merkle to make a mini app. You just do it, and people can use it. And that is really, really powerful. And it is, I think, one of the core superpowers of blockchain. And this is something I said you can't state with enough emphasis. If your system is not bottom up, it's not using the full benefits of blockchain. And I think that this is something that we could be doing a much better job of at BCard. We can discuss how a little bit later, but let's just talk about these idea of bottom up. So what does a bottom up organization look like? The core piece of it is that individuals can contribute and act without permission. And this is where I think we could do much better with BCard. So for instance, open source code, CC0 intellectual property, i.e. you can use the brand the way that you want it. Permissionless smart contracts and blockchains. All these things can be used without permission. Individuals can just use them. And another way I like to put this, and the way I've been putting it in my kind of day job lately, is that competition creates initiative. Initiative creates innovation. Whereas monopolies create complacency, and complacency creates stagnation. So if you are, like, one of the things that I currently hear at my day job quite a bit is, hey, we need to create a committee to fix this problem. And that is top down. Basically, you are giving the committee let's call it a local monopoly over that problem to try to fix it. But I actually think that a more dynamic approach would be to say, hey, I want to fix this problem. Here's my solution. I'm going to work on this. Does anyone want to work on this with me? Right? Like, that idea is more bottom up. You are not hoping to get the authority from some top down thing to work on a problem. You're just fixing a problem. And if it's fixed for other people as well, if you do a good job, other people will use it too. You're going to fix it for more than one one person. So I think that there's some wisdom from Braiding Sweetgrass. It's this book that I have that my wife read, and she put this kind of mantra on the wall in front of my desk. I'm looking at it right now, and I wanted to share it because I think it really captures the essence of what a bottom up organization, what you can, like, the kind of vibe of a bottom up organization. Gratitude over guilt, stewardship over ownership, responsibility over entitlement, community over ego. These are the things, like, when you're looking at these like two dichotomies, when you are creating a community, when you have like some kind of shared resources, I think all of these things, all of these like little mantras here are really powerful. And so anyways, let's stop there for a second. How do you feel about that? When I say this kind of thing, when I mention a bottom-up organization versus top-down, how do you feel about that?
Well, I wrote in the channel that I like that framing that you used in comparing and contrasting bottom-up versus top-down.
Yeah, what did you like about it?
The way you defined the bottom up, and I can't quote it yet, but I will be able to because we'll have a transcript. But I like what you said.
I have it up here if you want to see it. But yeah, you're talking about like...
It's there. Okay, I wasn't looking at the screen.
Something like this. Individual can contribute and act.
Oh, about the committee.
Yeah.
So the top down is to fix it, we should create a committee versus the bottom up. Why don't I put something out there and say, hey, would anybody like to work on this with me? And then see who's interested in that. So you kind of have to put something out there and then see who's interested in it, or share some ideas from the people that are really front line. I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said, but I really like that framing is what I'm saying. Of how bottom up, what does that mean? We talk about grassroots, we talk about bottom up. Well, what does that actually mean in terms of application, practical, feet on the ground thing. I think that's helpful.
Yeah. And another thing, which is, certainly a lesson that we learned in Bankless DAO, is that you need both types of structure. You need to have the ability for people to self-organize and get things done, but you also need accountability, and accountability only really comes from the top down. There doesn't seem to be any way of meeting out bottom up accountability except for reputation. I suppose this is where permissionlessness helps, but if deliverables are involved, then there kind of has to be some sort of guarantee, if you know what I mean. And I'm just considering this from a scalability standpoint and dealing with large sums of funds, and actually, when we get to be a larger organization, we're going to be talking about big important jobs that have to get done and timelines that need to be met, and bottom up structures are maybe not as efficient in those ways. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I want to agree with you that we need both kinds of structures. And I also want to put forth this idea that you cannot regulate bottom-up structures. Actually, we spent our discussion last week talking about how you can do that by creating incentives, by creating an ecosystem, right? It's true that a tree you can think of in an ecosystem. In some ways, it's top-down, right? It has first choice of sun and water and all this kinds of other things, and it behooves the kind of bottom-up new plants to be able to. They have to figure out how to get their own resources in that environment. But as long as that it is not the tree that's regulating the sprouts, the baby plants, right? It is the ecosystem that's doing that. And I think that is a way to create some bottom up accountability if you set up your system right. But I agree with your sentiment in general.
Yeah, it is about finding that sort of symbiosis between the incentives and the outcome. Garden is a great example of that.
Hey, Arkisti.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say with the committee thing or whatever, I kind of see forming a committee and the top down thing is it's sort of undertaken because there's a limited amount of resources, and it's set up so that they can kind of manage those resources and use them to get whatever problem needs to be solved. But what often happens though is they end up getting power, taking more resources, and probably not using those resources efficiently.
Yeah, and that's the core difference, right? Between bottom up and top down, managing versus yeah.
But I think that there's there's tools and technologies and stuff coming out where I think the resources that we're talking about are getting repriced all the time with because now there's AI and all sorts of different tools that change the cost basis, and then there's also the coordination stuff. So I think it gives more possibilities for the bottoms up to kind of compete with what has previously been sort of a top down where the top down stuff kind of was the main way that things worked.
Yeah, I think that there's also so I agree with you, and I also it made me think of this kind of top down trap. So for instance, I think the U.S. has been for most of its history a very bottom up organization, right? It was founded on these principles of self-empowerment, self-reliance, and it's really kind of a pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and that really worked, especially early on in America. Hey, send us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, right? And they could integrate in society. They could capture some of society's resources for themselves. It really has been bottom up for a lot of it. But then, as we had China, who's a very top down society, kind of emerge in the last 10 years, all of a sudden people are being like, oh man, like there's this kind of like, wow, China's able to move so quickly, right? Like that is true. Like that is something that you can say that like, oh, it's more efficient, right? Like this kind of top down management of resources. And in general, it's not incorrect that it's more efficient, let's say in the short run, right? Like monopolies become monopolies because they are efficient in some way, shape, or form, right? But I think that the trap that comes in is that as soon as there are no other options, instead of competing against someone else who is creating something else, it becomes more profitable to kind of solidify your own power, to stop progress rather than continue to push it forward. That is the trap of monopolies and top-down organizations, is that yes, there is this kind of seduction that is the seductive idea that they're going to be more efficient, but I think in the long run, a bottom-up system can be more resilient and is therefore more efficient. Any top-down organization will eventually fall, right? Like that is just I personally feel like that's just normal, right? Like okay, Egypt fell, Greece fell, Rome fell, and Britain stopped being a hegemony, right? So like this idea that any top-down system, it kind of leads to stagnation, right? Like a monopoly leads to stagnation. And when you have a bottom-up system, there's always going to be some natural mitigation against this, because the things that make that kind of top-down system work or competitive, when that stops being the case, there is going to be a new challenger that emerges kind of from that bottom-up ecosystem. So it's not as efficient in the short run, but I think in the long run, it's more resilient.
Isn't entropy the natural tendency toward chaos and disorder?
Yeah, so like in general, entropy is always decreasing, right? Like in general, if you look at like the heat death of the universe, it's basically all the molecules stop moving, right? So entropy in general is decreasing in the entire universe, but in some parts of the system, it is increasing at any given time.
All right, that's above my pay grade.
But yeah, no, I agree. I agree that entropy is part of this, right? Like I think that it's something, right? In some ways, like chaos is the ladder, right? Like if you've read the Foundation series, if you've read Asimov, he talks about entropy quite a bit. And entropy in a system is natural, and it just depends on the kind of system you have, whether it's increasing or decreasing. But it can only increase. It can only increase like. It can only increase and decrease in general, like in a local maxima or local minima. There's no like global increase of entropy.
Yeah, there's some pretty wild sci-fi out there on that subject right now.
Yeah. The last
By the
question
way, I don't
is
know if you
by
know this is
Asimov.
a side topic, and we are coming up on the end of the hour. I got to throw in a Star Trek thing. Star Trek is filming in Toronto right now. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I did not know that, but they in Strange New Worlds season 2, they had the bridge that I pass every summer to go sailing in it. So maybe it's Strange New Worlds again. I really love Star Trek, so yeah, that's cool. I'll have to look that up.
Anyway, digression, but I think it's relevant because they always cover in that, it's Star Wars versus Star Trek. Star Wars is more the fantasy, good versus evil, but Star Trek is really more the kind of, I wouldn't say utopian, but evolution of humanity and how do we actually work together. And, you've got the Federation versus these and the rogue anyway. But The point is, I don't know what point I'm making. The point is that Star Trek is filming in Toronto right now.
Yeah, Star Trek's such a positive view of humanity. I have a friend who is a venture capitalist, and the way she invests in products is, are they bringing about the Star Trek future? Like that is one question she always asks herself, because like Star Trek looks at a future. Like imagine humans actually achieved their potential. What would that world look like? Right, and I think that
Right.
is such a
I'd rather live in a Star Trek world rather than a Star Wars world.
absolutely.
If I had to choose between them.
The
And I certainly don't
recent
want to live in the
question,
Matrix.
yeah, the recent question I've been asking everybody that kind of pertains to this is that I ask them about their current job that they have, and I say, if you take a look at the current job that you have and that you're doing, if somebody gave you, everything you needed to survive, would you continue doing your job? Would you do it more? Would you do it less? And to me, that's parallel to the Star Trek future question, where sort of the economy is not based on like, working specifically towards a thing. It's more along the lines of we all do what it is that we love to do. And because we do what we love to do, what we can achieve is far, far bigger than doing things that we are forced to do. Something like that.
Yeah, there's a couple great lines from Jean-Luc Picard exactly about this. But yeah, Star Trek is a post-scarcity society. That means everyone has everything that they need to live, and so that they no longer struggle to survive. They now struggle to better themselves, to be the best versions of themselves, right? And so there are people who live like that right now, right here in this time. And are you one of those people? It is worth something to ask, right? Because not everyone has the privilege of being like that, but in an ideal future, I think we would be. And so we all have the ability to change our situations. And it kind of leads me actually to this last question that I have to the group here. Like in general, we are at max top down right now. We have institutions that control a lot of the things we do, banking, pharma, government, tech, right? We have these institutions, and we are at the kind of like top of we are at max top down, and a lot of the institutions that have been bottom up have become top down, right? And so I personally believe that we are in for a renaissance of community. We are in for a renaissance of grassroots movements. This is exactly what we talked about last week when we were talking about network states. We are kind of at the cusp of a bottom up revolution. And my question to you is, how will you engage? Are you going to try to control others, or are you going to try to better yourself? Are you going to wait for someone else to tell you what to do, or are you going to act? And I sincerely hope that if you're here, it is the latter and not the former. I really hope that you'll, instead of trying to keep control, the little control that you have, you will work on yourself instead. And I really hope that if you are here, that you're someone who wants to act, and you don't need permission to do that. And I think it's really important for us to think about that. So yeah, I pose that question to you to think about. How will you engage with this bottom-up revolution? Because it's happening. Whether or not we do anything, it's going to happen. So the idea is, how do you want to ride that wave?
Ride it all the
Great
way,
close, Lynx.
Yeah.
and then parasail off the top.
Parasail off the top. The little extra. I love that. All right.
Yeah, you always inspire at the end, and it makes me want to talk more, but then I ruin it, so I won't do that.
I don't think you ruin it. I think you do a great job, and I guess you're right that maybe I should go for the money quote at the beginning so that we can talk about it. But yeah, it's. Did you have something to say around engaging?
Oh, just about. It was a bigger topic related to one of our partners and the issues. Anyway, decentralized. It's another topic for another day.
Okay. Well, I'll just take the time to say thank you to everyone. I worked a lot alone over the last decade or so, just because it's the nature of my job. And I would try to do things on my own on the side, and a lot of those projects just didn't amount to anything, or I didn't really work on them because I didn't have anyone around to, first of all, inspire me, and second of all, to hold me accountable. And so I'm really grateful for this group because that is what gets me to move forward every week. And so I just want to thank everyone, all of you, for being here, for putting the work in, and for just engaging. All of that is extremely important. We would not be where we are without you, and I think that we're not going to get where we need to be without you. So thank you to each and every one of you.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Lynx.
Thank you, everybody.
Likewise.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
I got it.